We are recording.
All right, welcome to the NAIGC Board Elections Town Hall. I'm Dane, part of the Communications Committee. Today we're going to be having Mason talk us through the information on the board elections. If you do have any questions, please wait until the end when we get to the Q&A section. If you have any and you would like to ask them in person, we would ask that you wait until that time to say it. If you have anything you would like to type into the chat, we also have some people that are going to be watching that in order to monitor and bring those up when the time comes. With that being said, Mason, go ahead.
Thank you, Dane. Hello, everybody. My name is Mason. I am the secretary of the NAIGC. I'm going to be talking a little bit about how the org looks structurally currently, as well as the upcoming elections and all of the associated elections and committees that follow with that. So without further ado, just a quick reminder that we're going to ask everybody to keep their mics muted and have their videos off and utilize the chat function up until the Q&A at the end. So what are we going to be talking about today? We'll start off by going over the new organizational structure, kind of even talking about how it's transitioned from years past into the current iteration of the board. Additionally, we'll talk about some expectations for those of you that are planning on running for the governance side of the organization, so for our board members. We're going to talk about regions team representatives. So those are elected representatives for your region specifically. Additionally, the nomination committee, which is a brand new committee that the organization will be using this year moving forward. And then kind of how to get involved, how to run for a board position, how to run for a regional rep position, whether you should run for an advisor position or a governance position, things like that, or even operations. We're going to be talking about the elections timeline, as well as, how many positions are available, what the term limits look like, how to vote, and then the timeline of when that stuff will be shared with everybody. We'll wrap things up by mentioning the annual meeting and going over some key dates that are going to be shared throughout this. So, looking at the org, we have two sides currently. We have a governance side, which has a dual focus of ensuring that NAIGC stays true to our mission and is set up for long-term success. These tasks include things like drafting and enforcing policies, all of the treasury and financial health of the organization, strategic vision and long-term planning for the org, appointing and overseeing the executive director, whose function is to oversee all of the day-to-day operations of the NAIGC. Additionally, development and implementing best practices, nonprofit best practices to be specific. All right. And operations, there's a day-to-day tasks to ensure that we're executing on the mission. So think about governance as what is the mission? How do we develop the mission? And then ops is how do we ensure that what we're doing is matching up with that? So these tasks can include nationals and event sanctioning, our various tech departments, merch, communications, sponsorship, and scholarships, just to name a few of our operational teams and facets. So this is a nice chart that kind of breaks down what the organization looks like as it stands. On the left, you've got the governance column, which makes up the board. So the board is made up of 12 board members plus the executive director, bringing the total to 13. Of these 12, 3 of the board members are officers, being the president, secretary, and treasurer, with the remaining 9 being board members, 2 of which will also serve as a committee chair, whether it is the policy committee or the development committee. The treasurer will also serve as the finance committee chair. So as mentioned on the previous slide, the executive director oversees all of our operations. So they'll oversee the events department, the marketing department, the membership department, and the tech department, with the various teams that have been associated and linked with that department underneath them. So this is kind of how we're structured now. The chart can also be available at the link provided on this slide. So we're going to talk a little bit more about the expectations of board members. So this being, all right, if you are interested in running for governance and being on the board, what does this entail? You know, our board looks a lot differently than it did 2-3 years ago. And the role of a board member has changed drastically in that time. So board member candidates should be and need to be willing to learn about applicable laws and nonprofit best practices, and then be able to develop new processes and systems to make sure that the NAIGC is actually abiding by these laws and making the best effort to fit the best practices. Additionally, every board member is responsible to serve on at least 2 of our 3 current committees. They may serve 1 additional role in operations. However, that will not be a leadership role. So of the 2 board committees, of the board committees, 2 of them have to be sat on. We currently have policy, which reviews and develops documents pertaining to the best practices or nonprofit or state applicable laws. The development committee, which looks at KPIs or key performance indicators, and they'll do a lot of research and implementation of nonprofit best practices and recruiting potentially down the line. And additionally, we have the finance committee, which develops and reports our financial statements, implements fundraising and sponsorship opportunities and strategies for the associated operations teams to enact. So as kind of touched on in the last slide, about half of our board members will end up holding a leadership role. So that means the president, the treasurer, which is also the finance committee chair, the secretary, the policy committee chair, and the development committee chair are all elected board members who will need to serve in a leadership capacity. Additionally, the executive director serves in a leadership capacity. However, they are appointed by the board and not elected. So the terms for the 2021-2022 elections will be 1 to 2 years with a max of 4 two-year terms elected. And as stated earlier, if you run for a board, you're ineligible to serve in the department head or executive director role in operations. So the key thing here is that your focus is going to be on governance. It's going to be on the policy, development, and finance committee tasks, whichever ones you are picking up on. And it's estimated that this will take about a 5 to 10 hour a week commitment based on how everything has been going this year. So something else to keep in mind is right now as an organization, we're in our early life cycle stages, just meaning that individuals that have a lot of experience with early org development are really highly encouraged to apply. And it's also something to keep in mind that when we say board members and candidates need to be willing to learn about these things, it's not just learn about them and not just come with creative ideas and things like that, but also be able to follow through with the tasks and ensure that they're being seen through completion, at least on the governance side of things. So this is kind of a good transitional slide. So it looks at, all right, looking at our fiscal year 2019 to 2020, we previously had 15 or more board members. Of them, 11 or more of them were being rolled over. So they were in the middle of a 2-year term, or my apologies. So these 4 were rolled over because they were in the middle of a 2-year term. 11 were open. Most of them being 1 years with some 2 years available. The nomination committee was not instated that year. Last year's election, we reduced it down to capping it at 12, which was a transitional step through the restructuring. At that point, we had 11 open positions, 1 remaining from a 2-year term. From there, 8 were 1-year terms and 3 were 2-year terms. Again, we did not have a nomination committee at that time. So we're moving into the last kind of transitional phase right now, before we kind of hit this steady state election, which kind of is going to be keeping that number at 12 for our board members, of which we'll have 9 open positions with 3 rollovers. So the 3 rollovers are the 3 2-year terms from the fiscal year 2020 to 2021. And from there, of those 9 open positions, 5 of which will be 1-year terms and 4 of which will be 2-year terms. And this is where we're implementing that nomination committee. So in 2022 to 2023 and onward, we're going to be hitting our steady state where now that we've got those 3-year term, that transitional rollover period kind of figured out, we'll have about 8 open positions every year, with 4 being rollovers, give or take, depending on certain statuses and things like that. Meaning 4 will be open for 1-year term and 4 will be open for 2-year terms. And then again, we'll be utilizing a nomination committee. Now, in the event that the number of 2-year term applicants is less than 4, you'll take 8 minus and do some math fun stuff there. And then you can optionally mid-year 2-year term fill. So an individual who was a 1-year term could be asked to stay on for a secondary year, is my current understanding. If the policy chair knows if I'm wrong there, please speak up. If not, we're good. Okay. And then in the condition that you have 4 exact applicants and for a 2-year term, and you've got 8 1-year term applicants, there's no action needed. And if you have more than 4 applicants seeking a 2-year term, the top 4 will receive that 2-year term and the rest will not receive a 2-year term. So that covers a brief description of board responsibilities and tasks. We will talk a little bit more about that once we get into some discussion about the nomination committee. However, I do want to briefly touch on the Regents team, specifically the regional representatives, as they will be elected alongside the board in the upcoming elections. So the Regents team currently sits under the membership department in operations. It's made up of the regional coordinators and regional representatives. The regional coordinators are appointed by the membership department head as an operations role to serve each region. Their main job is to work with facilitating regional championship bids and really supporting hosts for the regional meet itself. And they kind of make sure that club contact information and they kind of keep a calendar of all of the events happening in that region. Whereas the regional representative is elected by the club from each region. Their job is to represent club's best interests and concerns to the board. Their main responsibility in terms of what membership sees is, hey, I have a concern. I want to bring it up to the NAIGC. Let me reach out to my regional representative, and they can be a direct pipeline from you and your team to us on the board. And they're, again, going to be aiding the NAIGC with growth and outreach within their specific region. So helping clubs get started, various different things down in each region. So moving on from our regions team, I want to touch base on the brand new committee for the NAIGC, which is the nomination committee. So the goals of the nomination committee are to simplify the election process for membership. Now, in the past, members have been given very complicated scaled charts and long pages and pages and pamphlets of reviews. So this is trying to simplify that by aligning candidates to existing skill gaps on the board based on a rubric. And again, this will not be changing how votes happen or anything like that. But the nomination committee will be made of 6 to 10 people that are appointed by the current board. They'll be made up of NAIGC students, coaches, current board members that are not running in the election, or other community stakeholders. Less than half of the current board members that are on the board that are not running for the board again could sit on the nomination committee, and anybody can apply to be on the nomination committee unless you are running for that position. So things to keep in mind, if you're interested in running for the board, but you also want to be on the nomination committee, you can't pick both in this case because there would be a conflict of interest. So what are some responsibilities of the nomination committee? So the nomination committee's main job is to review applicants for the board They'll be doing interviews with candidates and providing endorsements based on a rubric. And these will be made public to membership come the vote. So this is going to be about a 4 to 6 hour a week time or commitment from about March 29th to May 1st. And this all will be done via Zoom or teleconferencing, whatever the leader of that group decides platform they would like, whether it be Zoom or Google Hangouts, up to them. As mentioned before, this won't really shift the election process at all. It will, or my apologies, it will not change the election process. It shifts the time frame earlier, so that way there's more review under a non-transitional year. So for instance, next year, the board application process will begin earlier than it has in the past and even this year. The member voting process and eligibility is totally the same. So you'll get a ballot, you'll fill out your ballot. What this will be doing though is adding endorsements to candidate information from the applications in Q&A. Now, what does that look like? So when I say they're adding endorsements, if I move on to my next slide, this is a very watered down rubric that has not yet been approved. There is a rubric that the board is currently working on that has not yet been passed, but we wanted to share with you the general pillars of this rubric for the time being. So candidates will be ranked on skill sets. So they're going to be tiered. So there'll be a 3-tier, with tier 3 being the highest, most qualified, most endorsed, and tier 0 being the lowest or least qualified in each skill set. So again, this rubric hasn't been approved yet by our board, but some general things to keep in mind are, does this person have the appropriate committee skills? So for instance, on development, do they have professional development and onboarding experience? Do they have any human resource or recruiting experience, or diversity, equity, and inclusion training or experience? For finance, are they good at creating and managing organizational budgets, fundraising, networking, nonprofit accounting, and then policy? Or do you have experience with creating and writing policies in general? But more specifically, have you ever worked with NAIGC policies? Do you have a good understanding of them currently? Are you familiar with the verbiage that is used and some of the historic reasoning behind that? Additionally, with experience, nonprofit experience is a big plus, whether it's the NAIGC or other organizations. And are you knowledgeable about org best practices? So the other category within experience is strategic planning. So these are long-term organizational plannings, initiatives. Can you analyze organizational challenges and utilize methods like SWOT and TOES, various different things like that? And then our soft skills being our leadership. So these would be things about managing and coordinating large groups with multiple tasks. Are you good at attention to detail? Are you good at, not just managing, coordinating these groups, but working and delegating if need be? Work ethic, are you a diligent worker? Do you take initiative and complete tasks? Not only complete them, but are they done well and done on time? Do you produce quality work? Things like that. And then communication, are you clear, concise, and timely and professional with your communication? Not only within one group of teams or one group, but multiple teams, with membership with our stakeholders, and are you good at working in a collective team? So that's a brief overview of the candidate rubric. Again, I want to emphasize this has not yet been voted on and approved by the board. This is just, for transparency's sake, kind of what is coming up right now. And these are like the general big ticket items to keep in mind when asking yourself, would I want to run for the board? So moving on to the next slide, how do you get involved? How do you become a member of the NAIGC, whether it is on the board, whether it is an advisor, whether it's operations, or the nomination committee? So this slide's going to break that down. So starting off, if you're interested in governance, there are 2 real options that you can do. Option 1 is run for a board member position. Now, how do you do this? You'll add yourself to the ballot by filling out the application, which will be made available on March 3rd. if you are interested in nominating someone for the board, utilize the NAIGC discussion listserv and nominate them. Now, remember, you must be a part of the listserv to do this. So make sure that you're a member on the listserv and you get that out before applications close, which nominations and applications both close April 5th. So they're open from March 3rd until April 5th. Any information about this can be found on the elections page of naigc.org. All of these links will be made public with the slides when we share the slides. So don't have to go hunting it down. You can just click on it and it'll take you right there if you're having a hard time finding anything. If you're interested in governance, we are holding an additional office hour March 4th at 9 p.m. Eastern Standard Time, which will talk in depth about specific things within governance. It might help you decide whether ops is maybe where you're better suited for, or maybe if you want to run for an advisor on governance, as you might not have a ton of experience with governance, and it'd be a great way to like get involved, various different things like that.
Hey, Mason.
Yes.
Is there anybody waiting in the waiting room?
Currently, there is nobody waiting in the waiting room, no.
Cool, just making sure because we can't see it.
Oh, okay. Thank you.
But you're doing great.
All right. So if you are interested in running for an advisor position or interested in advisor positions in general, advisors don't have to get elected to the board. Advisors are appointed to the board by the board, and they can help with specific governance tasks and projects that fall within the scope of governance. So they could fall anywhere within policy, finance, development, or even something that's tandem to that or a subtopic to those. Advisor applications are actually open year round. You can find the application that's linked on the slide here as well. We really encourage individuals who have never been involved in governance before to apply as an advisor, just so they can get some good idea and things like that of what the organization really is, what the tasks are, what the obligations are for being a governance board member versus being an operations board member versus being a governance advisor. So with that being said, if you're interested in operations, so any of the various things that we've talked about previously, under the flow chart, this would be the process that you would want to utilize. So once the new board is elected, they confirm the appointment of the current executive director and operations leadership team. They'll fill in any gaps there. And then the operation leadership team will post available roles and an application to said roles on the NAIGC website under the open positions page, which has been linked here. Again, that is currently open. However, some positions will probably open up and other positions will fill up by the time the elections have concluded. So if you're interested in operations and you know that's what you want to do right now, definitely go ahead and check out that page or email info to get a little bit more information. And then if you're interested in the nomination committee, so what if, you know, you've got some time in the next couple months to really help get involved and you want to help make sure that the candidates that are going to be on the ballot are endorsed for the skill sets that they have, this is the opportunity that you have. So the nomination committee applications are going to be open during the same time that the governance board member applications are open. However, they close much sooner. So the nomination committee applications are open from March 3rd until March 18th. This will give the development committee time to review applications for the NomCom and then seat the nomination committee, onboarding them, make sure that they have time to properly do their job with all of the candidate interviews and application reviews. Candidates will be selected on March 28th, notified of their selection with onboard occurring the following week. If you have any questions at all about elections, please utilize the email that's listed on this slide, elections@naigc.org, with any additional questions. As that way, we have a dedicated email that's solely responsible for monitoring election-based questions, so we can make sure that we get that answered as quickly as possible. So elections themselves. Big questions that we always get are, am I eligible to vote? Who gets a vote? Things like that. So our voting eligibility this year is a little bit different than normally and not different at all than normally. So all membership NAIGC member clubs can vote in the annual NAIGC board election. Each club is given one ballot. These consist of both our collegiate and community clubs, alumni or alumni teams that are not affiliated within a club that compete together as approved by the NAIGC will not receive a vote. This has not changed. This is the exact same as it has been in years past. What has changed here is that the NAIGC membership fees are usually required, which is a $75 fee annually. However, due to the year that we've had, we are waiving that. So all clubs that voted in 2020 to 2021, or yes, my years got thrown off. I just had a little time jump there. So clubs that voted in the 2020 to 2021 election are all eligible to vote. And again, the fees have been waived this year due to COVID-19. So how to vote. So more information about each candidate will be given at the Q&A session. Election ballots will be sent out following the Q&A session. So the Q&A session is May 6th from starting at 9 p.m. Eastern Standard Time. Once that has been concluded, virtual ballots will be sent out to the registered club or the president's email for your club following the Q&A. Now, to make sure that this is up to date, please reach out to your regional representative or regional coordinator and just make sure that the email that you want that your club's email or president's email is the appropriate email, that it's not one from a president who graduated a year or two ago. That way your club will have the ballot in time and you can vote and not feel pressured the last minute to go, oh my gosh, I never voted, I need my ballot. So just something to keep in mind there. Now, the ballot themselves as for elections will be open from May 6th through May 13th. This will close at 11:59 p.m. Pacific Standard Time. So with all of our closings, they're Pacific Standard Times, but with all of our actual town halls, office hours, Q&A sessions, those happen in Eastern Standard Time. So just be mindful of that as you're looking at these timings. They're again on that key date slide, yes. So that's the ballot. Again, open May 6th through May 13th. Pending the board vote, we're going to be utilizing a different voting mechanism this year. So in the past, we've used a scale that went from -5 to +5. We've got mixed reviews on that from membership. So we're trying to utilize something different this year that we've done a lot of develop within the development committee and policy committee, making sure that this would be a step up from the mechanism we used. So our ranked choice voting mechanism has not yet been officially approved. We are working on that currently. It will be very shortly approved, so more updates on that will come very shortly. So what this is voters will rank candidates in order of choice. So you'll have a list and you'll say, I want this person as my first, my second, my third, my fourth, my fifth, all the way down until you've finished the amount of open people that you would like on the board. So votes are going to be counted in a series of rounds. If a candidate exceeds a percentage threshold, then they'll win a seat. If no candidate exceeds that threshold, then the one with the fewest votes is eliminated from the pool. And when a voter's top choice is eliminated, then their next choice is counted. So that's kind of by ranking them. If, you know, your first candidate was most people's like 13th, 14th candidate and they got eliminated, your second candidate would then be like your first counted. So ballots for board members, as they have in the past, will always include a write-in option for candidates that are not present on the ballot. All results will be disseminated via email on May 14th. So keep an eye out for that as well. All right. Next up is our annual meeting. So our annual meeting usually takes place at nationals. However, last year and this year, due to COVID and due to not hosting nationals, it will be taking place on Zoom. The date for this year's annual meeting is April 22nd. It'll be at 9 p.m. Eastern Standard Time. It'll cover both governance and operational components of the organization, specifically with governance. It'll hold our annual treasury update, election voting details, the evolution, the timeline of the NAIGC, goals and milestones that we've achieved this year that we're working towards, impacts of COVID-19 on the NAIGC, as well as reveal our next upcoming nationals location. Operations will additionally reveal goals and milestones that they have been achieving and working towards, and they are also a part of the nationals location reveal. Now, I do want to note that at least one representative from each club is required to attend. However, multiple are encouraged to come. There is no hard limit on that. So if you're the secretary, you're just a club member, and you're off, like your president was going to go, feel free to come on to it as well. The link for the annual meeting will be shared closer to that date. So this is our key date slide. If anything, make sure you look at this and you know when the timelines are, various things like that. So really brief recap of it. March 4th, our board member and nomination committee member applications open, as well as our regional representatives. That is not type 2, however, they are also open that day. There will also be an office hour for the board, for board learning, information about the board, so you can learn more about the board there. That'll be done 9 p.m. Eastern Standard Time via Zoom, and that link will be shared on Instagram the day of. March 18th, the nomination committee applications will close at 11:59 p.m. Pacific Standard Time. With April 5th, the board member applications will close at 11:59 p.m. Pacific Standard Time. April 22nd, the annual meeting will be held at 9 p.m. Eastern Standard Time, with a candidate Q&A taking place at 9 p.m. Eastern Standard Time on May 6th. Now, the ballot will be open from May 6th till May 13th, where at 11:59 p.m. Pacific Standard Time on May 13th, it will close. And then the following day, May 14th, board election results will be announced to both the candidates that were running for the board, the internal organization, as well as all of membership. So with that being said, are there any questions, comments? Do note that any feedback or general questions can be sent to info@naigc.org, and with any election-related requests or questions to being sent to elections@naigc.org. I will give a few moments for any questions, and if we do not have any questions, then that is all that we have. Thank you all for attending or watching the video that has been shared. Again, please utilize info@ or elections@ for any questions. If you're interested, come to the Q&A, come to the the office hour. We want to be doing our best to ensure that all of our potential applicants, as well as all of our membership, knows exactly how the internal organization is structured, as well as how everything looks now, because it looks so much differently than it did if you were a volunteer 2-3 years ago. And if any of my co-hosts have anything to say, feel free to comment.
I think you did a great job, Mason. I don't think we have any pending questions unless one of the other hosts do. Yeah, I think you did a great job of outlining the changes to the process and the kind of importance of this new nomination committee. And I would encourage anybody interested to apply once applications are open. With it being a new process, the more support we get at the beginning, the better.
Thank you, Billy.
Thank you for everybody who may be watching or watch us in the future. And Mason, thanks.
Of course. All right, that being said, I will end it here. Again, any questions at all, please feel free to email info@naigc.org if it's a general question, or if you're interested in operations, be sure to check out our open positions page on our website. And then any election-related questions, please send an email to elections@naigc.org. Again, thank you so much for stopping by today. Have a great day. How do I stop recording?